want to play the game to the best of our abilities. And that often involves professional instruction. And I'm excited to dig into the knowledge base of 3 guests on the program today. All of them happen to be graduates of Ferris State University. So this Wolverine is surrounded by 3 Bulldogs. We are welcoming in Joe Charles from the Boyne Golf Academy in the world of Boyne Golf. We have Lauren Strong from Forest Dunes and Kyle Martin from the Fortress Golf Course in Frankenmuth, where I had to be hauled off the course the other day because I was about to pass out. So that's Kyle's claim to fame, is that his course almost took me out, man. Well done.
You know, I don't often call myself a first responder, but in that situation, I just might have been.
You were very kind. You were very kind.
Us teaching pros, we do it all, right?
Yeah,
it's just pure reaction.
Yeah, the job description ends with other projects as directed, and that one is may have to drive Hopson home since he's seeing double these days. Well, I want to go at the very beginning. I'd like to go around the horn and just have each of you kind of give us a feel for when golf instruction became a passion of yours. It's one thing to go through all of the steps to become a PGA professional, but that can mean a number of things. It doesn't automatically mean that you're into teaching. So Joe Charles, for you, when did instruction kind of kick in for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So after I graduated Ferris, I did a bunch of years, like probably some of the other people on this call, bouncing back and forth between Michigan and South Florida. I was at Kalamazoo Country Club working for my mentor, Dick Stewart, in the summers. And then I was in Jupiter, Florida. I worked at the Medalist Golf Club, where we had a bunch of tour players that were members, and also the Dye Preserve Golf Club, where we had a bunch of tour players. And the thing that really got my passion for teaching going was I got to kind of become buddies with some of those tour players and get to know them and get to know the way they approach training and getting better at golf. But more importantly, I got to know some really good teachers down there, some of their coaches, and got to watch them work with their players. And that's really what got me going. I got to spend some time with Bob Toski, who was down in the West Palm Beach area, and I got to spend some time with Mike Bender and Chuck Cook. And so by working with great teachers and most importantly watching them teach at a very young age, that's what kind of got me into teaching and kind of stoked the fire, so to speak, for me for helping people get better at golf. So it's been fun.
Yeah, we're going to circle back to some of the things you observed at the Medalist when you're watching these tour pros here in a minute. So kind of put a pin in that. We'll come back to it. Kyle, for you, when did teaching become your thing?
So similar to Joe, my story starts in Jupiter, Florida. On my last internship through the PGM program at Ferris, I interned at the Jupiter Hills Club, and we had our director of instruction. His name was Bill Davis. And he said there was 14 interns on staff. And he said, anytime any of you want to shadow, just let me know. You can show up at 6 a.m. and tee up all the balls for me and take all the notes you want. And I just wanted to explore that because I didn't really know that much about instruction for my first 2 internships. And I thought, man, this guy has a blast all day and he gets to build these great relationships with all different types of people and get them better. And so that really started my passion towards learning a lot more about teaching.
Lauren, if your answer doesn't begin with, I was in Jupiter, Florida, then I'm going to wonder what happened here.
It's a great place down there.
What was it for you, Lauren?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Bill. So yeah, I went to Ferris State as well. I graduated in 2016, and I kind of made an effort to touch on all the different facets of the industry, merchandising, tournament operations, teaching, and by far, by the end of it and all my internship experience, teaching, I always came back to it. It's just fascinating. I feel like you can never stop learning about the golf swing. And with me being a female, I found a lot of female members and juniors kind of steering my way. And so it's just been fun to work with a big range of handicap, golfers, as far as scratch golfers to maybe beginners. And so my passion, again, is kind of similar to to Kyle and Joe is basically, shadowing and taking every opportunity you can to continue learning. And I think that's what makes you a better teacher overall is always realizing there's more to learn. So.
Now, if the four of us were in the same room together, as opposed to being connected on Zoom, Joe, if we lined up according to height, Joe would be first. I would be second. Joe's like, hey, 6'8".
It depends if I've had a haircut lately. It's
well,
5.5.
It used to be a factor for me as well, Joe. It no longer is. So Joe would go first. I'd be second. Kyle would be next, and then Lauren would be on the other end, like way down on the other end. And you said that juniors started coming your way, and I'm going to try to say this, Lauren, without in any way getting in trouble or offending you or getting canceled. These days it's kind of hard. But I can see why that would be, because you have a very youthful enthusiasm and appearance to you. And so I have no doubt that you connect quickly with juniors and with female golfers. But you and I spent time playing together for the TV show. And while we were together, there were a half a dozen older men golfers who came by Lauren because she had either just taught them or had a lesson coming up. My long-winded question is there a barrier to them accepting your advice that you have to fight through because you are a young looking female teacher?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it just depends on the player themselves. I'd say over the last couple of years, it's probably 50-50 as far as male, female. I think I don't really necessarily think there's been a barrier. I think that there's some males that probably maybe feel more comfortable getting a lesson from another male. I'm not sure, but I'm open to teach anyone. So whoever's interested, I'm there.
Well, Lauren was teaching me constantly while we were out playing in front of the cameras. So I did not object to any of the lessons at all. She's a pretty good player. Kyle and Joe, let me kind of pick your brain a little bit on what you observe as the primary need of amateur golfers today. And I know that that's a broad answer, but I'm guessing that with the volume of instruction that you're all doing, that you see some, if you had the pie chart, there'd be one slice of that pie that would be bigger than the others. So Joe, for you, where do you start with and what are you most commonly dealing with?
Yeah, so we teach a lot of different people at Boyne in our golf schools and our private golf lessons to people in the area. And we have people, traveling from quite a ways to come see us as well. And we always feel that the most important thing that we can do for anybody is stoke their love of the game. That by far is the most important thing. We want them to have a really good experience and enjoy themselves while they're at our facility and while they're playing golf. And people generally enjoy doing things that they're good at or that they feel that they're getting better at. So if we can help them get a little bit better, I wrote a little article for PGA Magazine this year on coaching coaches, and it was kind of the premise of it was how to communicate with players and kind of find out what their needs are, kind of to your question. And the first thing that I like to get our coaches doing is finding out what the player's big miss is. So, what is your big miss? Is it a hook? Is it a slice? Do you have trouble getting the ball up in the air? And the faster we can find out what that big miss is, the faster we can help to correct that. And if we can fix that big miss very, very quickly, like say it's a slice, for example, and get them actually turning the ball to the left if they're a right-handed golfer, they have more fun immediately playing golf. And that just goes right back to enjoying the game more. So for us, we feel like getting golfers to enjoy their experience and enjoy golf more, that's the most important thing.
So Kyle, what's it like when you get to that point and you can see the light bulb go on in the mind of the student, and maybe they aren't instantly cured, if that's the right word, but they are starting now to have a passion for practicing because they see hope in the future instead of absolute frustration everywhere they look?
So, I mean, when they start getting to that point where they're seeing the ball take the shape that they want, that's where I start asking questions of specific goals that they have. when somebody first comes in for a lesson, I always say, what are your short-term goals and what are your long-term goals? And they said, are you a financial advisor? I said, no, not really, but we need to look at specific goals. And a lot of times I'll write them down, or I'll put them in a file with other notes from that client that I get in each lesson, because the better you get, the sharper your lens gets. And the better you get, the more specific you get. And a lot of times you have to reset your goals. If your goal when you're shooting 105 is to break 100, and you break 100 consecutively a few times in a row, you obviously have to reset those goals. So it's that constant chase. And I think two of the big pillars that allow players to get to those phases are comfort and communication. And I think coming from an instruction point of view, especially with all the new golfers that are coming in the last 2 years, they need to be comfortable talking to you, and they need to have clear communication. So a lot of times in my lessons, I'll ask specifically, tell me what your ball does and what you don't like. And then as they're starting to see that shot shape change, I ask them, tell me why that's changing. Because if you can't tell me what we're changing, I'm failing you as an instructor. Because you have to be your own doctor out there. And so when you're on the golf course and you start running into some issues, or you're playing really well and you want to continue that, you have to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. So I think that's the big thing, is resetting goals and really starting to understand what you're doing, not just what I'm telling you.
I like the way you put that. And it also brought up a phrase that you use, which is failure, or the word failure, right? I know the failure feeling as a golfer. I experience it quite often. It's very, very frustrating. How do all of you deal with when you're giving your best? You're pulling out all the stops. Your patience says you've never been more patient. You've broken out all the toys. The pool noodles are out. The TrackMan is out. The gadgets are out. Everything is out, and it's just not working. So Lauren, that has to happen at some point. Maybe it's a short-term thing that builds towards a fix later on. But how do you deal with the idea as a teacher that it's not happening for this guy or this lady?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have been in that situation in the past. And maybe Joe and Kyle, you guys can agree, as far as it just depends on the type of student. Every student is different. Every student is unique. But I think for me, to try to avoid getting to that place, I, similar to Kyle, kind of narrow down the goals. But basically it's like, I try to stay positive and try to say, okay, listen, we're gonna hit some really great shots, probably some of the best shots you've ever hit, but we're also making changes. So we may see some difficult shots, or some shots or some aspects of what I'm trying to teach that may take a little bit longer to click. So for me and my approach of instruction, it needs to be customized to that student. And if it needs to be explained a couple different ways, then that's fine. To try to avoid to get to frustration, I think also just staying positive. Even if it's not the best shot in the world, just say, hey, you executed what we were trying to do. Great job. Let's keep moving forward and trying to stay, kind of a positive attitude, I guess, throughout the whole lesson.
Joe, I want to follow up on that by circling back to the things you observed back when the PGA pros were practicing at the Medalist, and you're just a young pup. You're a mere 6, 7.5 at this point. You haven't grown up to be a big boy yet. And I'm reminded, as recently as watching Ryder Cup, that there are some foul balls hit by the best players in the world. What did you learn from how they handle the foul balls and how they practice that you're able to maybe bring back with you to the Boyne Academy? Because I would think those were invaluable experiences to see the best players in the world working and grinding and sometimes failing.
Yeah, when they're training, those players, big misconception, a lot of people think that they spend hours and hours and hours on the driving range. And they don't really do that. These guys and gals, a lot of them go out onto the golf course, and they play a lot of rounds of golf, and they practice hitting golf shots on the golf course. And that's one of the things that we try to get our students to do. Maybe spend a little less, there's always good time well spent working on specific drills, trying to achieve different ball flights and different goals on the driving range. But you have to be able to bring it out on the golf course. And that's what they do. I used to see, Jesper Parnevik, for example, go out and play 54, holes of golf in a morning, just running around the golf course and practicing hitting shots. And, going back to your question, if they miss a certain shot, they have the mindset, they're eternal optimists, those players. They're almost surprised when they hit a bad golf shot sometimes. And, and it's because they believe in what they're doing so much that they feel like, if they hit a bad golf shot, the next, one of the analogies I always use is Reggie Miller talks about, he gave an interview one time and he said, if I missed my first 9 3-pointers in a game, I felt like I was going to make my next 10 because I was due, because I know I'm that good of a shooter. And that's kind of the way those guys are out there. They're almost surprised when they hit a bad golf shot, and they believe in what they're doing. They believe in their coaches so much that they know good things are going to happen if they keep at it.
I have that visual in my mind of galleries and photographers at tour events being so close to the ball flight path. You would never in a million years do that at your Thursday afternoon league because you would need Kyle to
We
drive
need a
you.
medic.
Yeah, you need Kyle to drive you to the hospital repeatedly. And so, yeah, that confidence level, Joe, is really, that's really a great point. And yet they still have the clunkers every once in a while. For me, as an amateur golfer, it sounds kind of weird, but I kind of take some solace in knowing that not everything they do is exactly how they had planned it, because it would move the bar so stinking high that I would feel like, well, they've never mishit a shot. I have no chance. Kyle, when we look at professional players, what would you prefer and what do you advise as a teacher that we emulate, and what do you advise that we not emulate when we see the best players in the world on television?
Couple things. Sticking to the process, right? I went to a seminar once, and Sean Foley had talked about, he's worked on just about 4 things with Justin Rose, and this is for years and years. And so I always think, if we worked on 4 things in a year with a client, would they think we're wasting their time because we're not going through 25 things? So sticking to the process, keeping simple tasks at the forefront, and really narrowing down a swing thought. I often talk to a lot of my lessons, and I say, what happens if you hit a bad one off the first tee? What do? You know what? Well, I try something different. So, okay, well, what happens if that shot goes bad? Well, I try something different. I said, so you've gone through maybe 4 swing thoughts by the time you're on our second hole. That's not going to be that enjoyable of a round, and it's not going to be that successful around it. I've had pretty much one swing thought for about 9 years. I'm either stubborn or stupid, or maybe both. I don't know. But staying committed to the process is the biggest thing. It's not wandering off onto YouTube and finding something that may not pertain to what your game struggles with. It's more of sticking to what your coach is giving you, because our goal isn't to pick out 19 things that go wrong. Our goal is to pick out the one thing that trickles down and starts to click everything together. And so oftentimes, if we stay narrow-minded on one swing thought, there's a reason for it, and people can kind of lose sense of that.
I'm reminded of a prompt that I got yesterday watching a YouTube video, not about golf, but you know how YouTube will always suggest other videos for you. I think it reads your mind. I'm not really sure how artificial intelligence works, but I think that's what's happening. And the suggested video, it popped up, the little preview, and it was instantly shave 10 shots off your golf score with these 4 easy steps. And I did not click on it because I knew that would then feed me a bunch more of this garbage. one after another. But unless those 4 easy steps are stop keeping accurate score, get some whiteout or an eraser in your bag, there's no possible way this could be the case. So Lauren, in your instruction, let's talk about how we bring students into a realistic goal setting mindset. So if 53-year-old Hopson here comes to Lauren, no cameras around, we're just out on the range, practice tee, and I say to you, Lauren, I've had a dream. Had this dream for several years, but now I think it's time to really dig in and achieve it. I want to play on the Champions Tour. I'm going to go to Q school. I'm 53. I'm at prime age. I mean, look at Bernard Longer. He's 64 and he's still doing it. So turn me into a Champions Tour player. And Lauren looks at me. Actually, she looks way up at me and she says, hey, dummy, that ain't happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess like, again, going back to what are the students' goals? Are they realistic? And trying to always, as a coach, I think it's super important to be very supportive of your students' wants and needs and goals, but also as a coach, it's our job to set expectations that are maybe realistic, or giving them a timetable to say, okay, we need to dedicate these next 4 weeks of the season to this 1 or 2 swing thoughts. Here's 2 drills that you can do. You need to be practicing 10 to 15 minutes on putting or whatever. And I'll do, I'll kind of go with each student and say, let's make these expectations realistic. And also, during the lesson, trying to check in and say, what are your two thoughts or one thought that we're sticking with? How does that feel? Just kind of checking in throughout the lesson, I think is one way to keep things realistic. Because I think everyone can kind of agree, some lessons that we've all had, it's like, they walk in and immediately want a magic fix. And it's like, okay, we can do that. We'll definitely change some shot shapes around and we'll create better contact and compression, but you're not going to shave 10 shots off your game from this one lesson. And I think that can sometimes be frustrating as an instructor.
Yeah.
But again, like Kyle said, just stick to the process.
Lauren, how long into our TV round before you understood that I was not headed to the Champions Tour?
Let's say you had a good shot on the first tee, and then I was like, okay, we can make some improvements here. I always like to say improvements, okay?
Nice.
First shot. Wow.
Kyle, your answer would have been the exact same. I know that.
No,
That's
you
true.
had some
That's
incredible
true.
shots. I'm not gonna lie, you had some incredible shots. It was awesome. It was great.
Yeah, well, that's called editing. Joe, as we speak right now on this Zoom call, Bryson DChambeau is out in Mesquite, Nevada. He's in the round of 32 for the World Long Drive. I believe as I started this conversation with all of you, he was near the end of round 2, trying to advance to the round of 16. And I watched a little bit of it and I wondered to myself, obviously, that power, that speed, that recklessness, which I don't say in a negative way, but it's a recklessness, just a complete abandon yourself, just leap into the ball. There must be some things that instructors would say, hey, watch this, and you can take some things from this. And then there are probably some things where the same instructor would say, but do not, whatever you do not do this. So how would you address that, Joe? What should we be learning when we watch something like that? And what should we be blocking out?
Yeah, so great question. I get a lot of questions about DChambeau. Kyle, Lauren, I'm sure you do as well.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yes.
What are the questions?
Today, actually.
And I always the thing I always lead with is I love Bryson DChambeau because he's bringing new people into golf. He's getting kids and excited about golf that maybe weren't as into it, and he's thinking outside the box, which I think is awesome. That being said, things that I admire about him and I try to get young players to emulate from him is his athleticism. I'm a TPI certified golf professional, and one of the TPI quotes is teach golfers to be athletes first and golfers second. And there's no question that he's a fantastic athlete, and the way he can move so fast and the strength that he has, and just how intelligent he is. So I think those are some great things for anybody to emulate. It doesn't have to be a young person, it could be an older person. whatever the case may be. Now, from a technical standpoint, I think that it is possible for different types of learners to have too many swing thoughts sometimes. And I think that that's where you could maybe, emulating Bryson, or, trying to think same way he does and process things the same way he does may not work for everybody, because as I mentioned, he is very intelligent and that's just what works for him, having a lot going on and being very technical. But that being said, I go right back to the athleticism. If we can get people moving better, moving more powerfully, and becoming better athletes, there's never anything bad about that. So I'm a big DChambeau supporter, and I think it's great for golf.
The concept of putting athleticism first and then golf after is I think a sizable shift from 30 years ago, from 25 years ago. Perhaps the introduction of a young Tiger Woods began that conversation, but we're certainly well into it now. So Kyle, when you hear that idea, athlete first, golfer second, what does that look like to you? And what does that look like, by the way, for the average golfer who may not have 6 protein shakes, a personal trainer, and a whole team of people around you?
I mean, going through the TPI certification, I went through the level 1 as well. It was really incredible to look at junior development. So when I teach a lot of juniors, and when they come in, a lot of times we'll do, and Joe knows this, fundamental movement pattern screening, right? Can you catch a ball? Can you throw a ball? How do you throw a ball? So it starts from really age 5. When kids come in, I'm teaching them how to throw a ball as far as they can. Stuff that has nothing to do with golf, but it's building those skill sets and balance and speed, agility, pushing, pulling, that will pay dividends down their golfing career. And so really, when I'm working with somebody, I'm evaluating how well can they do those, what some people would call simple tasks. And sometimes it's not easy at all. So you kind of evaluate that and see their coordination level, their balance level, and then go from there. Because some of it may be injury related. That's one of the big first questions I always ask. Do you have any injuries? Have you had any major surgeries? Do you have anything that I should be aware of that I need to be able to maybe work around? And so looking at their athleticism and what skill set and what injuries they have, that kind of helps build the shape of what they can do.
And I don't hear either of you saying, hey, you got to get in the gym and you start throwing around, 350 pound on the bench press, and you've got to be bulking up. You got to do 6 protein shakes. Some of the best players and longest hitters in the game are twigs when it comes to a physical specimen, right? I mean, Bryson is the exception to the rule in going out and becoming a giant guy. But for the most part, that's really not the case. And nobody would accuse Justin Thomas of spending countless hours in the gym. And yet here he is, one of the longest players in the game. So Lauren, athleticism versus golf, what's your take on that concept?
Yeah, I mean, even like on the PGA Tour, you see a plethora of different builds, different athleticism. I think that I teach a lot of women and older women sometimes. So I think it would be tricky to go to Mrs. Jones, who's 70, and say, hey, you need to hit the gym and be able to bench press, 400 pounds. And obviously that's, dramatic. But what I'm saying is, like, yes, athleticism is important. I think going to fundamentals, touching on juniors or beginner golfers is simple stuff like stretching and drinking enough water, eating properly before, I work with a lot of juniors as well, and talking about what you need to be eating for breakfast before a big tournament, or, how much water are you drinking? I think a lot of health aspects are affiliated with athleticism as well. And I wanted to touch on what Kyle said about junior golf. When I was working at a club out east for a few years as a teaching professional, I worked with hundreds of juniors. Our junior program had 450 kids in it. And we did a lot of hand-eye coordination And zoning in on the basics, of course. If there's a 5-year-old who's never played golf, this is how you hold the club. But keeping it fun, a lot of fun games to keep kids interested. And I think, everyone on this call can agree that junior golf is definitely thriving, especially in the last few years, and beginner golfers as well. So.
Yeah, and there are so many initiatives. Youth on Course is such a good initiative that the Golf Association of Michigan and several other state chapters around the country have been a part of, letting kids play for $5 and getting them into the game. The drive, chip, and putt concept at Augusta National is such a good idea. I mean, it's brought so many kids in, mostly because Dad wants to go to Augusta and he's going to really make sure the kid gets to the lessons. And at the same time, we think about where instruction has moved. Earlier today, I got an email that Foresight and Bushnell are both releasing new personal launch monitors for a couple grand, and they're supposed to be a big breakthrough because TrackMan is 25 grand or whatever, and these are down in the $2,000 or $3,000 range, which is great. That's great, but I don't know what good that technology does in the hands of an amateur who doesn't know how to interpret the data that it's representing, other than the fact that you can now play Pebble Beach and a few other courses that are probably preloaded into it in your new home theater with the big screen that you've built around. The technology for instruction has come so far. But Joe, let me come back to you. That technology produces data that doesn't do you any good if you don't know what to do with it, right? So are you seeing a lot of that as you have students come in, and all three of you can answer this? They're gonna buy the latest and greatest. They've got a 10-foot ceiling in their basement. They're gonna go buy the thing, and Joe says to them, "That's great, but you don't know what to do with the numbers."
Yeah. So we use a ton of technology at our place. We have a gear system. We have multiple TM4 units. We have a TrackMan range. So I believe in numbers. I believe that it's beneficial for the game. But to your point, it can be a little detrimental to some people if they don't know what those numbers mean and know how, what numbers are important for them and how to use that information to get better at golf. We do a lot of training, with the technology, but we ask a lot of questions to players, when we're using it. We don't always use it, but in lessons where we do use launch monitors, we will quiz our players a lot and say, okay, so the ball did this. What does that mean? What is the path doing? What is the club face doing? What do you think that number means? And that way they, rather than us just spewing information to them constantly, they're, exploring things for themselves, and they're actually, thinking about things comprehensively and figuring out a way to, improve with their own information. One thing I always like to say in lessons is it's one thing for me to understand it, but it's a whole other thing for you to understand it. Any good instructor can get you hitting it good when they're watching you, but really, really good instructors get you hitting it good when they're not watching you. And that's where, using technology can be helpful, but we need to give players feels and we need to instruct them in a way where they can manage their own games. And that's really the key behind all of this.
Kyle, did you begin teaching before this level of technology came about? And if so, how different is the world in 2021 than it was 15 years ago?
Yeah, I started when I first started teaching right out of Ferris. They had a TrackMan, and I had no idea what it was. So that tells you how far things have come. But when I was on my internships, I didn't have any technology. And Bill Davis, when he was teaching, I said, "What are your favorite training aids?" And he said, foot spray and plow stakes. And I thought, well, that's pretty inexpensive technology. Things have obviously come a long way, but to go along with what Joe said, to get them to hit it well and shoot lower scores when we're not watching. A lot of times when consumers have their own their own launch monitors, they can be in search for the perfect zero numbers, and that gets dangerous. And so a lot of times when people come in that have launch monitors, I try and talk them out of searching for zeros or searching for the perfectly straight shot, and straight's not necessarily an option. Usually it's by accident. So that's one of the, with the new launch monitors that are coming out for consumers, it's can be really great because they can hit balls and work on their game. It can also be really bad because they don't know how to use the numbers or what numbers are really beneficial for them.
Yeah. Okay. So Lauren, as the younger person in this conversation, or young guest conversation, person in the conversation, I feel like I'm asking somebody, do you remember when cars had cranks for the windows? And when the phone in your kitchen was on the wall and had this long cord? So you've always taught with technology to some degree, because you're younger than the rest of us. When you hear stories about foot powder and sticks and fire and all these different things, what do you think about the ability to teach without the technology? If you just went out with somebody and you were just using your eyes, how would your approach change to having instead all that data available?
Yeah, so I'll be 28 in November, so it's kind of like I feel like I've kind of seen both worlds, both sides of it. In the last 10 years specifically, so when I was at Ferris State, and during my internships and whatnot in the last 5 years or so, I've noticed that technology has definitely become more prevalent. So as an instructor, I feel like it's super important to always stay up to date with technology, how to use it, always at least understand how to use the most recent gadgets that are coming out, and explaining to students why this does what it does, and here's why this technology works for you. But to your point also, I feel like it can be very overwhelming to some students. If you're just firing up the TrackMan and saying, this is what smash factor is, this is what club path is, blah, 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 I think it can be very overwhelming. So to be honest, I have a TrackMan. I use it when needed. I'll always kind of peek at club path and face angle and whatnot. But I think Kyle and Joe could agree that, you don't necessarily need technology, and you shouldn't need it to be a good instructor. It just is a benefit to you. If you're able to use that. I think video is big for me, just so I can put swings in a slow motion and see it from different angles. But I think it all comes down to what the student is trying to feel. And if we're throwing a bunch of numbers and different gadgets at them, they could walk away from a lesson feeling even more confused. So I think it's, dependent on the student themselves. But yeah, I think technology overall is a good thing in the industry for sure.
Speaking
it's
of
validating.
Yeah.
I think it's validating. A lot of times, you can kind of sharpen your lens. Like Lauren said, we'll peek at the numbers, but even in our indoor studio at the Fortress, when we have TrackMan running, a lot of times I'll hide those numbers. Mm-hmm. And they'll just see shot shape. They'll just see maybe one number. They'll see carry distance, or they'll see face to path, or maybe just one number. But a lot of times I don't have any numbers up there, and I'll peek at my screen that does have the numbers to be like, okay, I think, she's 3 degrees into out, and you're just kind of peeking and you're like, okay, she's 4, right? So you can sharpen your lens as an instructor, but yeah, a lot of times when people come in and you fire up your TrackMan, they're like, whoa, this looks like what goes on in Bryson's head. And I don't necessarily need that.
For me, that would be the little GIF of the monkey with the symbols just going back and forth like that. I have a question for each of you, just a ballpark figure. What's your hourly teaching rate, Joe?
$150 per hour for me.
All right, Kyle.
85 an hour.
Low?
Mine's 100 an hour.
Okay. Here's why I asked that. Back when I was in high school and college, I was a fairly decent trumpet player, and I paid an instructor for lessons. And I would go every week to the Flint Institute of Music, and the guy who was the principal trumpet in the Flint Symphony Orchestra was my instructor. And I knew this, that if we were paying for lessons, we being my mom and dad, And he gave me work to take home. Since the lesson was 45 minutes to an hour, he could very easily tell the following week if I had practiced. And if I didn't, that's on me. And I've now wasted the lesson. I've wasted the time, his time, my time. I've wasted all this opportunity to get better. I have to think, Lauren used the phrase, the player's responsibility earlier. There's a part of all of this that reflects and requires on the dedication to practice for the player when they're not with you. So I don't know, Joe, how do you help drive home that part of it? I was an assistant coach for a high school golf program for 7 years. Enjoyed the kids. They wouldn't practice. They wouldn't practice except for when we were all together, and then they would have to practice with coach. And then when we went home, they would never practice outside of school practices. So they never really most of them never really got better. A couple of them did. How do you convey that the importance of personal practice time to a paying customer who says, well, that's what I'm paying you for?
Yeah. So, as a person who tries to help people, play better, you were kind of talking about, the old guard versus the new guard. And when we first started teaching, we called ourselves golf instructors. Our coaches at our academy, we don't call ourselves instructors anymore. We call ourselves coaches. So, what goes into being a coach? Well, one is teaching your student technique, right? What's good? What is good technique? And that's what most people think of when they think of a golf lesson. You're working on technique, changing movement patterns, changing positions, changing ball flight. So that's only 1/3 of the equation. The second is teaching the player how to practice. So what does that look like? Well, this is the drill that I want you to do. This is how many times I want you to do it. And this is what it should produce. And this is what it should feel like if you do it correctly. And then the third is motivating that person to practice. All three of those things are equally important to being a good coach. And, I feel like I'm not doing my job if it's not very, very clear to my player, what they need to do to get better. So we use a system called Coach Now at our academy, which is it's a pretty cool app that our players use, and it's a way for us to communicate. And we share videos and lesson notes and drills, and it's pretty obvious to the player when they walk away from a golf lesson. Here's exactly what I'm supposed to do, and coach is going to know if I didn't do it when I come back. And so having those other two steps, teaching them how to practice and then motivating them to practice is, really, really important for what we do as coaches.
And I think when you're a coach, you can also make them do push-ups and run laps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty sure. Kyle, what's your approach to take home work?
So we have a V1 branded academy. So I'll take a lot of high-speed video in the lessons. I'm such a visual person. I want to try and store as much as I can, which is always fun when I've been with a student for multiple years. We can look back at, hey, look where you were in high school and now you're a college player. But with each lesson that I give, I send a video out. So, Lauren, here's where you were before we worked on anything. Here's where you were in the middle of our drills. Here's your drill structure. Here's what you look like at the end. And here are the big 2 points that we worked on in this lesson. And that goes to their cell and to their email. That way it's a bit of a time capsule of exactly where we were in that lesson. And then I always encourage people, because we're a V1 Brand Academy, to download the app, because they can store all those lessons in their file. Now, I heavily discourage them to look back at, let's say, year 1 if we're in year 4. I do have clients that do that, but I try and discourage them as much as possible, just to stay relevant with what we're working on. But it is nice to be able to send those videos out, whether it's in the middle of the winter or in the summer, as well as they can, through that app, they can send videos back to me. I just had a player in a tournament in South Carolina. She was struggling. after one of her matches. So she sent me a video and I could pull it right up, analyze it, do a voiceover, and send it right back to her. So technology has come a long way, not just with launch monitors, but just to be able to communicate clearly with your student of what specific things they need to be working on.
Yeah, Lauren, I see you nodding in agreement with that. The communication process, even outside of the lesson time, is a part of that relationship, right, between teacher and student?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, my goal as a coach is to make every single student of mine feel like I care about their game, and I'm dedicated to them as much as they are dedicated to getting better, as much as they are dedicated and kind of trusting me and my ability and my experience and knowledge of the golf swing to get them better. So I do make it an effort to, you know, similar to Kyle, to send over a voiceover video, to send, you know, notes, just a couple notes, not a ton, but just a couple key points that we touched on, so that that person will always have that. I also make it a goal of mine to check in with each of my students every so often. Hey, how's the game? How's your swing feel? I have a lot of my students who will text me, hey, I shot this in a tournament, thanks so much. Or, hey, can you send me one drill that I can do? I can't make a putt, or whatever. So it's really, that's my favorite thing about teaching. I know this is one of your first questions on this call, but my passion is from teaching really stems from those relationships that you build, and, you know, your students really trusting in you, and you know, you helping them throughout the way. So that's my favorite part about it, for sure.
I used the example of trumpet lessons a few minutes ago, which reminds me that my instructor took lessons. So I was taking lessons from the principal trumpet player in the Flint Symphony Orchestra, who was taking lessons from the principal in like the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, right? And do you guys take lessons? Do you guys take instruction? I don't know how that works when you're teaching so much and playing not nearly as much as you would like. Joe, does anybody get to look at Joe's swing and tweak it?
Yeah, I had Jeff Roth in the studio helping me yesterday.
There you go.
So, you know, especially when I can get around people like that, you know, we were talking about it earlier. You never stop getting better as an instructor. And I think, you know, taking lessons yourself is a great way to learn. You know, I like to take lessons in things other than golf as well. You know, if you can take lessons, like I went and did a pistol training course where I was learning how to shoot a handgun, just because it was something that was totally foreign to me. And it was a way for me to, learn something that's kind of cool, but then also, get into that same mindset that my students are in every single day when they're around me, and understand how they feel. And, that way I learn how to communicate with them better and get to their level, and, get better as a teacher. So absolutely.
How about you, Kyle?
Yeah, between our first assistant and myself, we're always keeping an eye on each other. But I think I take a lot of lessons on lessons, meaning, Lauren works with Jason Gus. The wealth of knowledge and the skill set of so many instructors in the state of Michigan is incredible. So I try and spend as much time as I can sponging off of so many other great instructors in the area. If I'm up north, or even if I'm not, the power of Zoom, like we're on right now, I can call Lauren and say, I got a student that's really struggling with chipping. What do I need to, can I send you some videos? Or call Joe and say, I need somebody that really needs to get taller. Can I, I need somebody that really needs to work on power generation. Here's the TPI screen that I did. Can I send that to you? And the amount of communication that happens from instructor to instructor, I think, is often overlooked, because we do get stuck as instructors, as coaches, and we have to be able to rely on each other. It's not a dog eat dog world. I don't look at it as that way. I have all these friends and assets that I can lean on that maybe specialize in a different area or see something that I don't see, that I want to be able to sponge off them and see what they have in terms of feedback.
Yeah.
Lauren,
I totally agree with that. Like, for example, we were at the Teaching and Coaching Summit a few years ago, and I remember Kyle, I don't know if you remember this, we're waiting for a putting seminar and you're telling me about blast motion, which is something that you're using.
Yeah.
And, I went and got one and used it with some students the following year. So that's one of the cool things about, the golf business is, we're all in this together to an extent. The better golf is, the better, we're all going to be off. And it's pretty cool, the brotherhood and what we can do together. And, we're not really competing with each other. Everybody's trying to help each other out. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Lauren, does somebody kind of keep an eye on your swing and point out things from time to time?
Yeah, of course, for sure. And I think that, video is a big thing. If I don't have another instructor who can look at it, taking a video of my swing and trying to analyze it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of what I've learned and I feel has made me a better coach is shadowing other instructors. And what I take from it is their form of delivery. Little basic things. I mean, if you're someone who's just starting, who wants to be a coach and wants to teach, I think the best thing that I can advise is at least what I learned, but I'm obviously continuing to learn, but the form of delivery, how fast are you speaking, eye contact, how far away to stand from a student when they're hitting a shot, where to be, and not saying, maybe not necessarily saying something after every single shot. So that's kind of what I've learned as a young instructor is, you can kind of take what you want from other instructors that you shadowed and kind of make it your own. And that will always be ever changing to kind of what you're looking for.
Well, I'm going to do a couple like a lightning round. So I'm going to throw a couple of questions at all three of you. Answer can be less than 10 seconds. All right. So we'll go Joe, Kyle, Lauren. We'll just kind of go around the cycle here. First question for you. Outside of the state of Michigan, the one golf course that you want to play that you could get on?
That I could get on?
Yeah.
Pebble
Because
Beach.
everybody's going to say Augusta, and that's just not likely to happen real quick.
Could not, yeah. Pebble Beach would be mine.
Kyle?
Boy, getting a chance to play Seminole again would be pretty special.
Lauren worked at Augusta, so I'm already going to be upset if she says that one because she can get on it.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to play a lot of really good clubs. I think Tara Edie, which is a Tom Doak design in New Zealand, is somewhere that I want to play. I actually did an internship over in New Zealand and didn't get a chance to play it because it wasn't completed yet. But yeah, I think I'm going to go across the seas and play somewhere else besides the States for sure.
Favorite golf course architect, Joe?
Pete Dye, right out of Whistling Straits, right? He's on everybody's mind right now.
Kyle?
I would go Tom Fazio, and the guy was just unbelievable.
Yeah. Lo?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with Kyle. Fazio or Donald Ross. I think I'd have to go Donald Ross over Fazio.
Yeah.
Your perfect foursome. Three others to play along with you, Joe.
Oh gosh. Well, Bill Hopson for one.
Everybody
Dang,
says
you took one of my answers.
So perfect foursome, I would say Tiger, Nicklaus, and I'm gonna say Jesus Christ would be the third.
I like his chances in that showdown, by the way.
Yeah.
Because the ball never goes in the water. Just okay, Kyle, yours?
Yeah, you walk right across, right?
Amen, brother. That's right.
This one's easy. Payne, Stewart, Seve, and Crenshaw.
Oh, wow. I love it.
It's off the wall. It's not everybody's favorite pick, but man, they all had their independent styles and they all owned it. And I like that. Nothing was really textbook about them.
From what I understand, you might need to keep Payne and Seve apart from each other, depending on what the match looks
Yeah,
like.
for sure.
Lauren, who's your foursome?
Yeah, Joe, good answer. I'm going to say Jesus as well. I mean, that would just be so cool. Maybe he could give me a couple extra putts and whatnot. But no, I think also I'd have to say my grandfather. He's the one that got me into golf. He's passed away, but it would be cool. You said anyone. So, and then probably, I don't know, I'd have to go Tiger Woods.
Yeah. By the way, let the record indicate that none of these three just named the four of us as. The last question for you, the best in-person golfer you've followed, witnessed, seen, played with, whatever, but you've been there in person to see this person do their thing, Joe?
Yeah, so I got a chance to spend some time with David Frost and play golf with him and listen to some stories that he would tell and just talk to him about some shots that he would hit. And it was super impressive. So I'd say David Frost for me.
Nice. Kyle?
Well, I would say the best in-person golfer I've seen. Well, I was with you at the Miracle at Medina. at Medina, and seeing Rory. I mean, just his skill set is unbelievable. I mean, it is a different sound. It was a different sound at that point, and the height he could put on the ball was just insane. And the way he took that golf course of power was just impressive.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear how different 2012 Rory is from the 2021 Rory. But yeah, it's a good call. Lauren?
I'd have to say, like, yeah, I go down. I'm fortunate enough to go down to the Masters every year and help work that. And last year I was hanging around the range a little bit. And so really any PGA Tour player that I was, watching hit shots is just, it's kind of fascinating. I mean, I don't really have anyone in particular, but really just anyone who's on tour, just their practice routine and how much time they take over the ball before hitting a shot on the range and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have anyone in particular, but yeah.
Yeah, my answer in 2009 was the final Buick Open. And on that final Sunday, when Tiger was clearly going to win, I walked in the ropes with his group, the final 9 holes, and it was just silly. It was literally like the video game version where it had a glitch in it where just things kept happening that shouldn't be happening, and it was really that good. So hey, I really appreciate you guys all taking some time to share your passion for instruction. Again, Joe Childs from the Boyne Golf Academy, Kyle Martin from the Fortress in Frankenmuth, Lauren Strong from Forest Dunes, and you guys are a credit to the Bulldog program. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with me and for not ridiculing my own game too much. I appreciate that. I would have had to edit that out anyway. So thanks, guys and ladies.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Thanks, guys. It was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to see you.